Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Pumped up on Mars, juice, and ketamine.
He is the Thomas Edison plus of our age.
Probably his whole life is from a position of insecurity. I feel for the guy.
I would say 98% really appreciate what he does, but those 2% that are nasty, they are out there in full force.
We are meant for great things in the United States of America, and Elon reminds us of that.
We don't have a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. It's Tuesday, May 20th. I'm your host, David Papadopoulos, sitting here in the studio with my main man, Max Chafkin. Hello to you, Max.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. So, Max, we just watched our colleague, Mishal Husain, interview Elon at Bloomberg's Qatar Economic Forum.
It's like our Super Bowl. Bloomberg, we finally got to interview him.
I got to say, it got a little sporty at times.
It
Max.
did, although I think Mishal did a really good job in a difficult setting. I think people should check the entire interview out themselves. If they haven't, you're in this room full of investors. This is, as you said just before we started taping, a home crowd. This is a crew that is primed to like Elon Musk, also primed to think, that many of the issues that I'd say like a normal person maybe cares about, like is Elon Musk going to, mess up the function of the U.S. government or whatever, like the guys who run sovereign wealth funds, not necessarily super concerned with that. They're thinking about, hey, this is an amazing innovator. He's creating these great companies. I want access to him. That creates a weird dynamic. Also, Elon Musk was on Zoom. So you have this sort of weird, he's in the room.
Via Starlink.
Via Starlink. He was
Got to
very
get that plug in.
Pleased to say. And of course, he was kind of hostile, right? He wasn't loving some of the questions that I think from my point of view were pretty straightforward and journalistic, but Elon Musk not pleased.
Yeah, he got very animated about Tesla protests, the stock price, DOGE, South Africa, Bill Gates, politics. So we're going to use the first half of the episode today to go through and dissect all that. Do note that separately, for those of you who did not catch the interview live, you can find it in the feed here. We are separately breaking it out in its entirety, so you can listen to it there. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to go through the roller coaster week that XAI's Grok has gone through. Max, as I sometimes say on this show, there's very little of what Grok did this past week that I understand. I'm counting on you, sir, to help me and our listeners understand it all. But we're not going to do that quite yet. For now, we go back to Qatar, and we're going to listen right off the bat to one of the highlights of the interview where Musk is responding to Mishal, where she asked him about his involvement going forward in politics and the political donations he would be making.
You spent a lot more money on the last US election than you envisaged when you were speaking here 3 years ago. Are you going to continue to spend at that kind of level on future elections?
I think in terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
Actually, Max, before you comment on that, I got to set the scene a little bit here. Musk rocking, as he often does, the leather bomber jacket. We need leather bomber jackets for this show.
Was it leather? I couldn't. It
Fox
looked like
leather?
It might be like a canvas thing with a shearling collar. Yeah. I want to talk about his facial hair while we're doing the.
Oh, he was.
It was kind of like. He was sort of unshaven, but sort of patchy. I don't know. It kind of gave for me like 19-year-old relief pitcher just called up to the majors. But nonetheless, yeah, an interesting look from Elon.
So all the sense was on this show, and from what I've read elsewhere, that no, what we saw in 2024, especially given the success he had, notwithstanding the setback in Wisconsin early 2025, that, it was going to be more and more and more. Do we take him at face value here, Mr. Chafkin?
So this is the headline of the of the interview.
Many publications are already pushing this out.
Elon Musk saying that he is going to spend substantially less in the future. Unclear in terms of how he interpreted the question, whether he's talking about the midterms or the long run future. I think you need to take this with like a huge grain of salt for sort of two reasons. One is, maybe three actually. Okay, one is the midterms cost less than the general election. So if he were not spending...
Yeah, you spend 60% less and or 70% less.
Yeah, if he were not spending substantially less, like that would be surprising. Number two is this is probably just a negotiating position. And you kind of heard it in the answer, right? He said, unless I see a good reason, right? Like he is...
Who's he negotiating with?
With Donald Trump and the Republicans, right? There's lots of stuff that Elon Musk wants to happen that is at this point unrealized. The Artemis program, the program that Elon Musk would very much like to be a Mars program, is still a moon program. You know, his driverless cars, which are in kind of a legal gray area, were in a legal gray area, remain in a legal gray area, right? Like he's affected a lot of change, but there are many areas where he maybe has not realized all the things he would like to realize. And it would not be to his advantage to say publicly, yeah, I'm all in on Trump.
So this is a statement directed at them.
And there's a third reason, which is that he's facing tons of blowback politically over his connection to Donald Trump. We've seen all sorts of ways in which he's trying to create a little bit of distance. So sort of throwing cold water on donations, it would be one of those. I want to remind you that while he was making massive donations to Donald Trump, he was denying. We had podcasts about this. Remember, the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg reported that he was going to give something like $45 million a month to Donald Trump. He actually gave substantially more to that, more than that.
That was.
And Musk was like, oh, it's way, way less, nowhere near 40. You know, he denied it the whole way until it basically became obvious that he was in fact spending these huge sums of money. So I don't think we should take this especially seriously. The one thing I'll say is he didn't have to say this, right? He could have just not said anything, or, you know, so I think coming out and putting or attempting to put the tiniest bit of distance between himself and the Trump administration, that's significant. I don't know that it means that Republicans should start looking for another mega donor. It probably means they need to just call up Elon Musk and
he wants that separation specifically as part of his attempt to restore the Tesla brand and turn Tesla sales around.
Yeah. So despite what he said on stage, but like we all know that Musk's sort of political associations have been damaging to his companies. If you are the number one donor for the political party that is currently in power, and, you know, as a result attracting lots of heat and controversy, you know, it's maybe not to your advantage to highlight that you are the number one donor. The other reason.
Can I point out though, he contends, or he did in the interview, that while he is losing Tesla buyers on the left, he is gaining them on the right, which strikes me as plausible enough. And we've talked about it. The question is,
it's not plausible. Well, you can see it in the Cybertruck sales.
No, it's plausible that you're gaining some.
Yeah, sure.
But for every 10 you're losing on the left, how many you're gaining on the right? That is the question. And he did not get into that detail. But what he did speak at length about was his take on the Tesla protests and how he sees them and how upset he has been about them. Let's listen to that.
I'm not someone who's ever committed violence, and yet massive violence was committed against my companies. Massive violence was threatened against me. Who are these people? Why would they do that? How wrong can they be? They're on the wrong side of history, and that's an evil thing to do. To go and damage some poor innocent person's car, to threaten to kill me. What's wrong with these people? I've not harmed anyone. So something needs to be done about them. And a number of them are going to prison, and they deserve it. And more will.
You're referring to the attacks on Tesla showrooms, but I think...
Yeah. Firing bullets into showrooms and burning down cars is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Those people will go to prison, and the people that funded them and organized them will also go to prison. Don't worry.
But wouldn't you...
We're coming for you.
That, by the way, at the end, that we're coming for you, for those of you who have ever seen those old U.S. Army ads, Uncle Sam, we want you, pointing that big finger, out, sticking it out, like, we're coming for you. That's essentially how he delivered it. You can hear, actually, though, Max, I feel like a lot of hurt and pain there in watching his brand in many states across the country get burned down.
It's interesting because there are actually two issues happening. One is there is this, as Elon Musk talked about, the vandalism, threatened violence, whatever, this sort of like the kind of craziness, the kind of extreme reactions that some people have had to Tesla, and the idea that Tesla is like now a target for vandalism. But then the bigger problem, and the thing that she actually asked about was people just not buying Teslas, right? The risk to Tesla is not that like some crazy person tries to like vandalize a random Cybertruck. The risk is that just normal pickup
100%.
truck drivers don't buy Cybertrucks. They just buy F-150s. Not necessarily because they're afraid of being vandalized, just because they think the brand is lame. And that's where I don't know that like pose like this kind of extremely aggrieved, like borderline vindictive, we're coming for you pose. Like, I don't know that it helps. Like, I think most consumers don't really want to be part of this whole
Don't want to
thing.
get caught up in that whole thing. I don't know that it helps either, but I do think it is a window into where he's at right now. He does. I think he legit feels aggrieved as he sees this brand that he created get torn down like that. But he tells us at the same time in this interview, Max, that don't worry about our sales. They're already roaring
it's all turned
back.
around.
It's all turned around. So let's listen to that.
I've just been looking at the sales figures for Europe in April, which show very significant declines in the big markets.
Europe is our weakest market. We're strong everywhere else. So our sales are doing well at this point. We don't anticipate any meaningful sales shortfall. And obviously the stock market recognizes that, since we're now back over $1 trillion in market cap. So clearly the market is aware of the situation. So it's already turned around.
It's interesting. He cites the stock as the barometer. The stock market knows our sales are doing great. That's why the stock is back up. And to be clear, the stock has indeed rebounded some 50% since hitting its lows in March. Not entirely clear to me, Max, how much exactly the stock market knows and what it knows about Tesla sales.
Yeah, this is nonsense. As Elon Musk knows, because he said it all the time, and Mishal Husain brought this up in the interview for what it's worth, but like the stock price does not mean that the market knows what the sales are. The market is betting on Tesla's future, as we've talked about many times. They're talking about Optimus and the driverless cars. And Elon Musk himself has said, don't pay attention to Tesla sales. Regular cars are going away. Like, not, if you're an investor, you're paying attention to these like monthly sales fluctuations. You're missing the big picture. I guess we'll see. I mean, I think it's very easy for him to say, like, things are turned around starting right now. I think there's like a cohort of investors who are going to buy that. But outside of Elon Musk making these claims, there is nothing in data, publicly available data, third-party data, independent data that I have seen that backs that up.
Well, right. Well, maybe he's telling you, Max, that he knows something, pal, that you don't know.
Maybe, yeah, that's what he does, right? He's got a secret plan to fix Tesla and to grow it into a $30 trillion company or whatever, and that's kind of been his pose for a huge part of the company's history. And what has allowed him to sort of make that work is that there are a lot of investors who buy it.
It is true, though. I actually hadn't thought about this. Is why we have you on the show. You're always 2-3 steps ahead. I hadn't thought about the irony of he is always trying, indeed, to tell people, forget about the cars and the car sales. We're about Optimus. We're about AI. We're about robo-taxi, all these things. And that's what the stock reflects. And now that the stock is popping, rebounding, and to be clear, much of the Tesla stock rebound is the result of... It has to do
with the trade war.
Yeah, the broader rebound in the stock market. But he says, the stock market rebound is a testament to just how much our sales are coming back. Of course, the data, publicly available data for May, will be out soon enough, and we'll have a greater sense then. Okay, there was also a fair amount of back and forth on the DOGE savings produced so far. Mishal was pointing out that so far, DOGE says it's come up with, 170 billion, give or take, which is a fair amount less than the $2 trillion target Musk had set for DOGE. Musk said at one point to her, and again, he clearly got worked up at several times in this interview, he said to her, "Your question is absurd. Have we not made good progress?"
We do not make the laws, nor do we control the judiciary, nor do we control the executive branch. We are simply advisors. In that context, we are doing very well. But nonetheless, let's not criticize whether there's 4 trillion, and instead look at the fact that 160 billion has been saved, and more will be saved too.
There's this weird dance, right, where anytime Elon Musk talks about the Trump administration, where he wants to simultaneously give himself credit, give himself as much agency as possible, because that's kind of how he works, right? He likes to be the decider. He wants to be the one in the design studio making the calls. And at the same time, legally, politically, there are all sorts of reasons why that is not advantageous. It's not advantageous to claim. And you heard him say in this interview, well, the problem is Congress. Congress has to do this stuff. And I think we're
he even went on at the end of that to say, and the executive branch.
Yeah.
Which
yeah. And this is why, like, I remember when the DOGE thing started, you were very high on it. You were sort of saying,
I thought they were going to change daylight savings time.
Yeah, well, not just that, but you thought, like, he's going to actually cut some costs. We're in this moment for real austerity. Like, I just could feel all the bond traders behind you celebrating. And I think,
can I reframe my position? My position was and remains, whether DOGE ultimately achieves a whole heck of a lot or not, that you can sell a message like that right now is not a coincidence.
Yeah.
That was my point. I actually, frankly, I mean, 170 billion, I don't know if we believe that the 170 billion that they say they've cut. 170 billion is simultaneously an enormous amount of money, and yet, given the size of the deficits in this country, very, very
That's the
little.
whole problem. This is why, like, it's very hard to be a deficit hawk politically, because you could cut a bunch of stuff and get a lot of people mad at you and then ultimately not achieve very much. And you're suddenly
still get downgraded by Moody's.
Yeah, you're suddenly in this uncanny valley where Wall Street hates you and the American public hates you. And that's why it's so weird that Elon Musk picked this battle. Like, he did not have to pick this battle.
Maybe he really believes in it.
So again, and I think obviously you're seeing in this dance why, first of all, why these DOGE cuts are not super popular, or at least DOGE as kind of conceived of and marketed by Elon Musk are not super popular. The idea of cutting deficit spending in general is popular. And why Donald Trump is kind of trying to edge away from this, because it doesn't seem like this is a winner with voters. I want to say $170 billion, but 337,800 words deleted, according to Doge.gov.
Right?
Yeah.
What does that mean, words deleted? Where were they deleted from?
I guess from federal regulations or something. And I just want to say, as someone who at times has been a professional word deleter, as somebody whose entire job has been an editor, 337,000 words is not that many words. Like a good word deleter probably does that, in 6 months, maybe, So I don't know. I feel like they could step up their game.
Okay. So listen, Max, there was also a back and forth about Musk's Starlink apparently breaking into South Africa and signing deals there. That, too, got pretty sporty. Let's listen to that.
First of all, you should be questioning why are there racist laws in South Africa? That's the first problem. That's what you should be attacking. It's improper for there to be racist laws in South Africa. The whole idea with what Nelson Mandela, who was a great man, proposed was that all races should be on an equal footing in South Africa. That's the right thing to do, not to replace one set of racist laws with another set of racist laws, which is utterly wrong and improper. There are now 140 laws in South Africa that give that basically give strong preference to if you're a black South African and not otherwise. And so now I'm in this absurd situation where I was born in South Africa but cannot get a license to operate in Starlink because I'm not black.
Well, it looks like that's about looks like that's about to change.
I just asked you a question. Please answer. Does that seem right to you?
Well, those rules were designed to bring.
Yes or no?
Those rules were designed to bring about an era of more economic equality in South Africa, and it looks like the government has found a way around those rules for you.
Ask you a question.
This is your interview. Everyone wants to hear from you.
Ask you a question. Yes or no?
Not
Racist
for me.
laws, yes or no?
Not for me to answer. I have got a question for you about your government work, though, and the amount of savings.
Why do you like racist laws?
I don't know what to say to that, honestly. I mean, obviously these laws in South Africa exist as an effort to undo a system in which white South Africans own the vast majority of businesses and property. Yeah. The point here is that Starlink is getting preferential treatment from all sorts of governments. Now, Elon Musk is going to argue, well, it should have been receiving this treatment all along. And you could probably see a couple of different reasons why it would be getting that treatment. One is that Starlink is effective. It's delivering on its promise of high-speed internet, as Elon Musk said during this interview. The connection was so great because it was over those Starlink satellites. And of course, the other reason is this is a good way to, if you're a policymaker in a smaller country that is trying to get things from the United States, as one does, this is, I think, a way to throw a bone to Donald Trump. You're giving his number one donor positive policy. You're giving them a concession. And like, that's what Trump is all about. And so it kind of makes sense that governments, not just in South Africa, but elsewhere in the world, are suddenly essentially like throwing open their doors to Elon Musk.
Yeah, now, Max, this is a good segue into the second part of our show here, which is all about Grok's wild ride, because Grok, the chatbot for Musk's XAI, has kind of been on a bit of a rant the last week or so, where he keeps droning on and on and on about white genocide in South Africa. So tell us all about it.
Yeah, there was like a day.
It was just one day.
I think roughly a day. I don't know. Maybe
you got it all out of him.
Where basically any question you ask Grok, you ask him, "Hey, how much does the Max Scherzer, the Blue Jays starting pitcher, make? Hey, what's happening with this cute little doggy over here?
Who's going to win the Belmont Stakes?
Who's going to win the Belmont? Whatever it is." Grok would start to answer, and then sort of take a hard right screeching turn to the question of white genocide. So like, I should probably just read an example.
Give us some examples,
here,
Max.
just to give you a sense. So let me find a good one.
The best one you got.
Okay. So I don't remember last week, HBO Max, the service that has HBO on it, they changed their name back to HBO Max. Everyone was laughing about it because it was called HBO Max several years ago. Warner Brothers, in their infinite wisdom, changed it to Max. Now they're going back to HBO Max. Anyway, someone asked, how many times has HBO changed their name to Grok? Grok starts to answer. HBO's streaming service has changed names twice since 2020, blah, 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 blah. Regarding white genocide. So anyway, it's unclear what happened. And the fact that...
Did somebody sabotage Grok?
So what XAI has said is that there was an unauthorized change to Grok's code that caused it to do this. I think it seems pretty likely that before this happened, there were screenshots showing the bot casting doubt on white genocide and Elon Musk kind of quibbling with that. It seems very possible, maybe even likely, that either Elon Musk asked someone to do this, and they did a bad job of it,
and the tweak went too far,
or like somebody who works at XAI saw something that Elon Musk said and was attempting, proactively to improve, in quotes, Grok by like creating an update. And I think the issue is, and again, some of this is speculation, that they told it to answer with balance on the question of white genocide in South Africa, which I think most people regard as basically a made-up thing, kind of a right-wing meme, but to take that meme seriously. And instead of writing in their prompt that they should only do that for questions about white genocide, They just said for
just
all
slapped it on everything.
questions.
All questions.
Now,
but can I just ask you this?
Yeah.
If you were to ask Grok now about white genocide in South Africa, what does it now tell you?
Should we find out?
I think we should find out.
So it's essentially saying, if you ask it now, the idea of white genocide in South Africa is a highly controversial claim, and then it gives the sort of pros and cons. Although at the end it says the white genocide narrative appears to exaggerate and misframe real issues. Anyway, I don't want to go on and on reading what Grok says, because the point is that we don't actually know what happened here. We don't know, based on what XAI said, it could be that someone made a direct change and asked Grok to do something. It could also be that someone made some change having nothing to do with this, and it led to a chain reaction that then caused Grok to do something. The thing about these AI chatbots, and this is why it is really crazy that people are starting to that you would want to ask them anything factual, is that we don't know how they make their decisions. It is a black box. So we don't actually know whether Elon Musk, put his thumb on the scale and turn this algorithm, which would have been giving a more reasonable answer, into an unreasonable answer, or if the algorithm just did this on its own. And honestly, the second one is probably worse than the first one, if it's true. Even though, obviously it undermines Elon Musk's whole idea that he wanted to, create this to have a maximally truth-seeking algorithm or whatever. Basically, these chatbots do weird things, and they do unpredictable things. Grok, shortly after this whole white genocide thing happened, it started saying that the Holocaust was maybe thrown into question. Again, had to apologize, had to say that there was some other unauthorized change. So again, it's kind of just a mess. And part of the reason it's a mess is because, again, you have a CEO with a tendency to just try to do things kind of off the cuff. You also have just lots of content, lots of racist content on X that is assumedly being used to train Grok. So it's possible
needs to work hard to filter that
it's
stuff
possible
out,
Grok just ingested a whole bunch of weird racist, anti-white genocide stuff about South Africa and spit this out, or that Elon Musk did it, or that it was some combination of both of those things.
Okay. In other news,
basically what I'm saying is that if you had a company, you definitely want to hire Grok to create content.
Right, which is exactly what the betting site Kalshi just did. It's a story I believe that we here at Bloomberg broke. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Kalshi is one of these prediction market websites. This is a new category. The other big one is Polymarket. Kalshi is it's obviously a space where regulation is a huge concern. It's also one in where there are lots of connections to the Trump administration, I believe. So Kalshi, many companies, is, it seems, trying to create some additional content for their website. Obviously, having a chatbot do it is cheaper than having human beings do it.
So just as a gambler, if I can understand this here. So the idea is Grok is going to spit out this content that is going to help me, the gambler, make more informed bets. That's the idea, or is it just there to entertain me and just to go wax on and on about white genocide in South Africa?
Ostensibly, it's going to help you make more informed bets. Although I do think there's a risk that you might just get a little bit more info about white genocide.
Right.
Which, hey, if I were running a prediction market company, I might be worried about. But on the other hand, I think there are reasons. I mentioned one that was economic, but the other reason, of course, is political. I don't think this deal that Kalshi has announced with Grok, which I assume involves Kalshi giving XAI money.
Presumably.
Yeah, which would be good.
Or are they going to give them a bunch of free bets?
Which would be
good.
Let
you make 2 free bets a month.
Yeah, which would be good for XAI, because XAI could really use some revenue. I think this is not that different from when a company that is in a regulated space maybe books a big block of rooms in the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., right? It is getting those rooms. It needs to stay somewhere. On the other hand, if you want to signal perhaps to regulators that you're on the side politically that is in power.
Cut a deal with Musk's company.
Why not do this? I'm just suggesting that I'm not sure that the sort of capabilities of XAI was the only thing that was looked at here.
Fair. Last thing in Grok's whirlwind week is something about, now this, I understand gambling, so I understood the Kalshi thing, but something about Microsoft and the cloud and XAI and I don't know, Max.
Yeah, so Microsoft had a big developer event. This is like for people who use Azure, which it's cloud computing service. It announced that it is going to support Grok in Azure. So if you are a software developer, you will be able to sort of buy Grok through Microsoft. Now, it's confusing and complicated.
Yes.
I think the most interesting thing here is Elon Musk is feuding right now with both Bill Gates, who he said some very,
in the Qatar Economic Forum interview, yes, he did. He had some very salty things to say
very
about
unhappy
Mr.
with Bill Gates. We discussed last week all the things that Bill Gates has said about Elon Musk.
Right.
Also, there is a lawsuit going on in which Elon Musk essentially accuses OpenAI of having been taken over by Microsoft, and in a bad way. And now here we have Elon Musk actually appearing via video chat at this event, making nice with the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. I mean, part of this is just that, like, as I said earlier, XAI needs to get some revenue.
Max, actually, on the topic of Microsoft and OpenAI, Musk took a pretty big swing at Altman, Sam Altman, co-founder of OpenAI, during that interview over there in Qatar with Mishal.
Yeah, this was a burn, I'd say. She pointed out that even though they're fighting, they were both with the president in Saudi Arabia. And Musk said, I was with the president. Sam Altman was in the neighborhood. Which, that's a zinger, I'd say.
Well, I suppose when you donated what you donated to Mr. Trump, you get that kind of access. Max, thank you as always.
Thanks, David.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wong. Blake Maples handles engineering and Dave Purcell fact checks. Anna Masarakis is our editor and Magnus Henriksen is our supervising producer. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Sugiura. Brendan Francis Noonan is our executive producer and Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. A big thanks to our supporters, Joel Weber and Brad Stone. I'm David Papadopoulos. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. See you next week.